Okay, hi, welcome. I'm Dr. Jennea Wood. I'm a naturopathic physician with Tummy Temple in Lacey, and I love teaching about natural medicine. I've been teaching classes since I first started practicing 10 years ago, and yeah, it's just, I love to share information and um, just offer something that is free and hopefully benefits people. And then also, there'll be some information about possible next steps for people who have maybe a little bit more complicated things going on that they might want to see me or one of our other naturopathic doctors about. So with that, let's get started. And, gut health is a major area that I've been focusing on for the past 10 years. It's a major area that Tummy Temple focuses on, although our name is a little misleading because we actually see people for all sorts of health conditions, thyroid issues, low energy, hormone imbalances. Myself and Dr. Dowdy will be co-teaching a class next month on transitioning into menopause that I highly recommend. It's a really wonderful resource. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, so this is, gut health is a passion area of mine, and I'm excited to share some information about it. Please do just ask questions as you go. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat. I'm just pulling that up right now so I can see it. Or you're welcome to unmute yourself and just ask a question. Okay, so the gut is the foundation of our health. It's so central. It plays a huge role in regulating our immune system. Something that I've said to a couple patients in the past week or two that kind of blows my mind is that in some ways we are not so much an individual, we are a colony, and actually we're kind of more bacteria than we are human. So so central. There's so many medications that it turns out it's not really the medication itself that's having an effect on our body. It's the breakdown product from our gut bacteria that creates the active constituent that has the effect on our physiology. So it's so central. It's just, we learn more and more and more with each passing year. Really, really incredible stuff. And we want it to be in balance so that we can have good health. So if the microbiome, that's the term for the whole milieu of bacteria growing in our gut, is imbalanced or deficient or thrown out of whack, then our health is at risk. So we want to get that back in balance. So who needs gut rebuilding and when do you need it? The obvious answer would be any sort of gut symptoms. So bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, heartburn, et cetera, et cetera. And that is absolutely true. And there are all sorts of non-gut issues that also would benefit from focusing on gut health, doing some rebuilding of the gut lining, the gut bacteria. And that includes people with chronic headaches, people with fatigue, with skin issues like eczema, with brain fog, mood imbalances like depression, anxiety, autoimmune conditions. Absolutely, it's a huge, huge factor in autoimmune conditions. Heart disease, allergies, asthma, so many things. And actually, we know that people who have zero digestive symptoms, they just feel great in their digestion, but they have these other kind of non-gut chronic health issues like high blood pressure or joint pain, things like that, actually really can have leaky gut, which we'll get more into that later, but can have, really actually a pretty significant imbalance going on in their gut that just does not manifest as gut symptoms. And we know that because there is testing that looks at the leakiness and kind of compromise of the gut lining and can find that that can be kind of off the charts in people that really have no gut symptoms. So really just humans living in the modern world can probably use some help with gut health. Leaky gut is kind of layperson's term for intestinal hyperpermeability. That's the medical term. And that is a condition where the lining of the intestines, especially the small intestine, gets disrupted. So I'll go into a little bit more detail into what that means. So the lining of the tube of our gut has, on the innermost layer, has this single layer of cells called epithelium. In some ways, it's kind of similar to our skin, but it's a little bit distinct because it has different roles, obviously. But there's this single layer of cells that lines the intestines, the inner layer. Those cells are held together so that they form a sheet by things called tight junctions, I mean, they're kind of exactly what they sound like, little junctions that hold all the cells together in a continuous sheet. And that layer is meant to be very selectively permeable. So it should only allow certain things through, and very specific things. So it's meant to only allow fully digested food components like, so when we eat meat or tofu or something that's rich in protein, the protein should be broken down fully by our digestive process into individual little particles called amino acids. Those amino acids should be selectively absorbed through that sheet of cells into the bloodstream, and then we can use those amino acids to build our muscle, to make proteins and enzymes and things in our body that do the work of keeping us alive. And then that gut lining should selectively absorb glucose molecules. So just like individual or sometimes like two little sugar molecules held together. But otherwise, it should keep everything else in the gut and not allow it into the bloodstream. So in leaky gut, those tight junctions kind of relax, the gaps between the cells open up, and then we can have larger bits of like strands of amino acids, bits of protein, toxins from the bacteria in our gut, or even like some bacteria can leak through into the bloodstream. And our bodies really don't like that. Our immune system in particular really does not like to find non-self things in the bloodstream. It's treated as sort of like a low-level infection, which, if there are bacteria leaking in, it kind of is. So that immune system is very unhappy about that and produces inflammatory chemicals as a result in order to kind of fight the infection, even if it's not really an infection. And that low-level inflammation is what actually is at the root of a whole bunch of those chronic health conditions that I listed before. So the asthma and the heart disease and cancer and autoimmune diseases, there's almost always this leaky gut component that is part of the underlying inflammation going on there. So what do we do about it? I'm going to take a sip. So we use a program called the 4R program. And this has been, some form of this has been used by naturopathic doctors for a very, very long time. It got named by a functional medicine MD, Jeffrey Bland, who's a part of the Functional Medicine Institute. He kind of came up with that name, the 4R, and it's a handy way of referring to it. So, but it's an old and very very useful strategy of rebuilding gut health. So the 4Rs stand for remove, replace, rebalance, and I think it used to be reinoculate, but we're going to call it regenerate because things have shifted in our understanding of how the gut works. So I'm going to go step by step through what each of those phases of gut rebuilding looks like. So remove is talking about removing the causes of leaky gut. So that's the first step, is to get rid of the things that are irritating and inflaming the gut so that it's, easier or even possible to heal. It's going to be really hard to make any headway if you're still being exposed, if you still have a infection in your gut or still are being exposed to massive quantities of chemicals that are destroying the gut lining. So removing the irritants is the first step, and that can be a lot of different things, really. So that can take a little bit of, there are some common sense things that pretty much anyone could, look at their lifestyle or the things they eat and say, okay, maybe I could make some changes there, and we'll go through those. And then there are some things that are going to be individual. And so, if you try some of these things and aren't having much change in digestive symptoms or other health concerns, then it can be really useful to work with a naturopathic physician, get some testing done, figure out if there is some kind of insidious ongoing reason that needs to be addressed that's individual to you. I'm not seeing any questions so far. Okay, so infections, gut infections can be bacterial. An example of that is a condition called SIBO, which stands for small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So it's essentially just too many bacteria growing in the small intestine, which is like it starts just below the stomach, and it's about 9 feet long, section of gut tube. And then it connects to the large intestine, which is the final 5 feet. That middle 9-foot small intestine section should not have very many bacteria in it. So it is possible to get an overgrowth of bacteria there, which can be a source of inflammation and irritation and lead to leaky gut. So that's one thing. There can be viruses that bother the gut and infect the gut. There can be intestinal parasites. There can be overgrowth of yeasts like Candida. So those are the sorts of things where, oftentimes it takes some testing to determine what exactly is going on there. And there are, advanced functional stool tests that can look at what's growing in the gut. Or there is for SIBO, which, with like chronic terrible bloating or burping or things like that, oftentimes I'm thinking SIBO, especially when it's worsened by high fiber foods, onions, garlic, raw apples, things like that. Then we would do a breath test to look for that SIBO. And then you would, work with myself or another doctor to treat that infection as a part of the gut healing plan. Other things to remove or reduce exposure to in order to reduce inflammation and irritation of the gut lining would be environmental exposures, environmental chemicals. So that can include all sorts of things found in our water supply. Chlorine is very irritating to the gut lining. So having a good quality water filter, if you're able to, is very impactful. Reducing antibiotic use. So this is happily starting to happen that, doctors are a little less quick to jump to antibiotics. They can be life-saving in a really severe infection. And so I'm not saying like, don't ever take an antibiotic. If it's going to save your life, take the antibiotic. But they get prescribed for colds all the time. They get prescribed for sinus infections that are almost certainly viral, and an antibiotic doesn't work for a viral infection. And same with ear infections. The majority of ear infections are viral, and antibiotics get thrown at them all the time. And they're just not going to work. And the person will probably get better around the time that they're taking the antibiotics, but they would have anyway. And so that was an unnecessary use of antibiotics. So reducing that exposure, and those are killing off the healthy bacteria in the gut. Oral contraceptives actually can cause leaky gut. And, there's no perfect contraceptive plan. And so sometimes this is just the best strategy for a lot of people, and that is okay. And, you can work on other ways of improving gut health. But it's also important to know that it does have an impact. Over-the-counter medications, especially like the category of NSAID, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medications like aspirin, Advil, naproxen. Those are very hard on the gut lining and the stomach lining. They cause a lot of inflammation. So those are a huge one where, if you're having the type of regular pain, like regular menstrual cramps that are severe, or regular musculoskeletal pain where you're needing to use these, monthly even, that's really worth working on the root cause. Like, why is there so much pain, and finding other strategies rather than reaching for those medications so often, because they really have a massive impact on the gut. Chronic long-term use of antihistamine medications for allergies also does. And so that's another reason to look into root causes of seasonal allergies and not, be taking antihistamines year after year. Heavy metals cause gut inflammation. And a lot of times those are kind of insidious. It can be hard to know you have that. So that is another reason to do some advanced testing to look at body burden of heavy metals. Herbicide and pesticide exposure. So as much as possible, eating organic to reduce those exposures is really important. Glyphosate, or, that's the herbicide found in Roundup, actually has antibiotic properties. So eating non-organic foods and getting chronic exposure to Roundup is kind of like, it really is. You're taking micro doses of antibiotics in your food all the time. And I know that, that's not available to everybody to eat all organic or even partly organic. And so it's just, do the best you can, reduce the non-organic foods where you can. Exposure to mold is a huge factor in leaky gut, and is a big deal in this part of the world where it's very rainy and we can have roof leaks, and just, everything is damp a lot of the year. That's another thing where molds, especially the type that happen with water damaged buildings, those molds produce toxins that are literally antibiotics. So penicillin is the first antibiotic that was ever discovered, and it is a mycotoxin. It's a mold toxin that was originally isolated from mold. And there are a number of antibiotics that were originally isolated from molds. And so if you have mold in your home, it very likely is pumping out mold toxins that are, like getting microdoses of antibiotics all the time, and are throwing off the balance of gut bacteria. It's a long list, obviously. And this is not meant to, make anybody feel hopeless. We can make significant impacts in improving gut health by reducing these things as much as possible, and just over time, step by step. So doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be all at once. It's not possible to be perfect. That's not a thing that exists. So just reducing as much as we can. Plastic chemicals can cause leaky gut, so we want to reduce those as much as possible, not be heating our food in plastics, ideally not be drinking bottled water in plastic bottles. Again, I just recommend, if possible, investing in a water filter and drinking filtered water, and refilling your glass or metal stainless steel bottle with filtered water. Artificially scented products like perfumes, scented candles, and plugins can be very hard on gut lining. Choosing essential oil-based products instead would be much better. And so, yes, this is just one of those areas to take it step by step. If there's a certain area that kind of rings a bell for you, or oh, that's a big deal for me. I get a lot of that exposure. Maybe, just pick one thing to start on and then work work along through the list, reducing exposures as you can. So that's the first step. Removing exposure to as much of those things that we just discussed as possible. And actually, a few more things in that section. Removing or reducing foods that can be very inflammatory. This is another area where it can be quite individual. So, dairy can be very inflammatory for one person and just really not a problem for another person, for example. So this is another area where one approach is to do an elimination and challenge diet where you just remove all of the foods that are the most commonly allergenic foods for a period of, say, 2 to 6 weeks. 2 weeks is a little on the short side, but a lot of times people will get a pretty good idea of what foods are bothersome for them, even in that short a time, and it's just more doable. So, removing the most commonly allergenic foods, which would include wheat, dairy, soy, corn, peanut butter. If you have joint pain as kind of a chronic symptom, also, I would recommend nightshade vegetables, which includes tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and potatoes for 2 to 6 weeks, and then adding those foods back to your diet one at a time to observe for reactions. So that's one option. An option that people sometimes prefer is to do a blood test that helps to identify food reactions. It's not a perfect test. It can have false negatives and false positives because there's more than one type of food reaction, and this test only looks at immune reactions. And then also because it can have cross-reactivity, and so occasionally something will pop up on the test and just not really be pertinent. Eating it just doesn't end up causing the person any troubles. However, it's useful. It gives kind of a shortened template for a lot of people of what foods to start out, what foods to look at as possible problem foods for them. So that would be something that you would come in for a visit with myself or our registered dietitian, Heidi, get this test ordered, and then we'd coach you through an elimination and challenge diet based off of that. So some of these, that's kind of the more individual food reactions. And then there are kind of food additives and certain things that are just going to be inflammatory and irritating to the gut for anybody. And so that would be a lot of food additives in highly processed foods, really high salt, like eating lots and lots of like chips and crackers and things like that. Just low fiber, highly processed junk food in general. Alcohol is going to be inflammatory to the gut for everybody. I'm not talking, like a glass of wine occasionally, no big deal, but regular use. And then gluten is a problem for a lot of people. It's one of the more common inflammatory foods, and it can increase zonulin, which is this protein that's in charge of keeping those tight junctions tight, keeping the gut lining intact. And so gluten really can be a problem for quite a lot of people as far as leaky gut. Overeating sugar as well. And then, a diet that's just low in variety and leans heavily on wheat, dairy, soy, corn, eggs, alcohol, and sugar is just going to be inflammatory. So even if you don't have a specific food reaction to any of those foods, eating a diet that is, mostly processed foods made of majority those ingredients is going to be inflammatory anyway. So I would instead recommend focusing on increasing variety in the diet, focusing on whole foods, foods in their whole form. So like whole vegetables rather than like a food powder, just getting lots of plants, lots of herbs and spices, whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds, as much organic as possible, grass-fed meats, wild-caught fish, organic soy products prepared in a traditional manner, like tempeh or tofu. And then we want to remove as much stress as possible. Stress absolutely causes leaky gut. The stress hormones that get released when we are under stress damage the intestinal lining and also reduces the production of the digestive juices, the digestive fire that helps us really digest our food properly. And so then, when we're under stress and we have to keep eating in order to survive, we don't digest those foods as well, and they sit around and kind of ferment and go bad in the gut, and that leads to more digestive imbalances. So, part of this is just societal. There are a lot of things that we can do to help reduce stress, meditation, just leaning on community, spending time with people, laughter, all of the many, many things, herbal teas, herbal remedies, so many things. And then also, I do think we just systemically need to look at our societal norms around overwork and just take that needs to be part of the conversation, because there's only so much we can just de-stress out of our crazy, unsustainable work schedules and all the things that we all are juggling. All right, that was a lot. Those are all the things that can be at play in the inflammation and irritation of the gut, and that we want to be, as much as possible, reducing. Questions so far? Okay. So the next phase is called replace, and this is about supporting better digestion by adding in extra digestive fire so that we can more thoroughly digest our foods. Because anything we don't digest fully is gonna kind of sit around and cause problems. So our digestive juices include hydrochloric acid that's made in the stomach, and digestive enzymes that are made in the pancreas and released kind of just into the top of the small intestine, just after the stomach. And then bile, which is released from the gallbladder also into that like top of the small intestine area. And there's a whole cascade of hormonal signals that lead to the release of these different digestive factors. They're our first line of defense against gut infections because they kill bacteria. So they help keep bacteria from overgrowing in the small intestine. They help prevent us from getting food poisoning, and they digest our food properly so that we can absorb the nutrients from our food, and so that the food doesn't then ferment. And so we absolutely need them. They're very, very important. They can decrease over time just with age. Our bodies can produce especially less stomach acid. They definitely decrease with stress because when we're really stressed, our nervous system is just directing our resources elsewhere and really not focused on digestion. And so the signals do not get sent to the stomach and the pancreas to release those, and the gallbladder to release those digestive factors. And so we just don't digest that well. They can be low with a certain type of gut infection in the stomach called H. pylori, or with overgrowth of the yeast candida. They can be low, as stomach acid can be low from the use of antacid medications or proton pump inhibitor acid blocking medications. And then they can be low with in a lot of chronic diseases, including asthma, celiac disease, Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, hepatitis, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoporosis, and diabetes. So with a lot of chronic health conditions, there's also this component of low stomach acid. Signs of low stomach acid include a sense of fullness after eating or a feeling like food just sits too long in that kind of upper gut area. Bloating, excessive burping, indigestion, heartburn, having a lot of food reactions, having undigested food in the stool, and peeling and cracking fingernails. So those are the things that you might notice if you had low stomach acid. And, you know, when people have heartburn, they're often put on these acid blocking medications because it's assumed that the cause of the heartburn is too much stomach acid, when actually the opposite is often true. It is occasionally possible to have too much stomach acid production cause heartburn, but for the majority of people, it's actually too little stomach acid that's behind the heartburn. And that's because you need actually a really acidic environment in the stomach to tell the little kind of sphincter, the little doorway at the bottom of the esophagus to stay closed, except when you swallow. And so if there's not enough stomach acid around, that little sphincter hangs open, and then it becomes really easy to get some stomach acid that's still acidic enough to feel really uncomfortable in the esophagus, but not acidic enough to keep that doorway closed. You can get that acid splashing up into the esophagus. And I teach a whole class on heartburn, and so keep an eye out for that. I'll probably teach that one of these days coming up. So if that's something you struggle with, I have a class on that. So how do we help our bodies produce more digestive juices? Eating in a relaxed environment and avoiding multitasking. So, you know, calming down stress, focusing on our food, focusing on our eating, chewing thoroughly is really, really important. If we don't chew thoroughly, if we're kind of bolting our food down and it's just partially chewed, then the stomach acid we do have, the digestive enzymes we do have, they can't get in there and do their job well enough. So chewing each bite until it's liquid is very important and will cut down on a lot of bloating, actually. And then there are a lot of foods and kind of therapeutic foods that can help our bodies produce more stomach acid or can actually add in some more enzymes themselves. So eating a little bit of papaya or pineapple can give you some papain or bromelain digestive enzymes. Peppermint and ginger can reduce bloating and nausea. Fermented foods can have sort of a dual effect. You're getting the benefit of the healthy bacteria, and they're often sour, and that sour flavor stimulates stomach acid production. Bitter foods, and that can include like a little bit of citrus peel, dark leafy greens, having a little salad of dark leafy greens at the beginning of a meal. Bitter foods actually work even a little better than sour foods and stimulate production of stomach acid and digestive enzymes and motility through the gut. So that is actually a wonderful habit to get into, to either take some digestive bitters or eat some bitter foods at the beginning of a meal. Raw apple cider vinegar is kind of a classic strategy to help improve stomach acid production. And so that would be like, you know, a tablespoon of stomach acid in a couple ounces of water, and sip on that 10 to 15 minutes before a meal. And that will help your body start to make more stomach acid, and actually helps to balance blood sugar and reduce blood sugar spikes from the meal as well. And we have a bitters formula called Temple Bitters. That's actually, happily for people who don't really like bitter flavors, this one is not that bitter, but still works really well and contains some herbs that are calming to the nervous system as well. So it has that dual action. It has the bitters effect that helps with all of those, the motility, the stomach acid, the digestive enzymes, and then also the herb that helps get us into a relaxed state to more properly digest. And then I'm pretty sure the co-op has some great bitters formulas as well. And then you can actually supplement some extra stomach acid or digestive enzymes or bile. And so a lot of times that actually is really useful to, at least for a period of time, maybe 3 months or so, take some additional digestive factors. So that in the supplement form, the stomach acid is called betaine hydrochloride. A caution about that would be if you get like a burning sensation with taking that, then it's not a good thing for you right now. And that is often because there's some underlying irritation in the stomach specifically, where, you know, the stomach should have this thick lining of mucus that makes it so it can hold plenty of very acidic contents. If that gets broken down and worn down, then you won't be able to, at least for the time being. So that would be, you know, check in with myself or one of our other doctors and work on addressing that. And you should be able to get back to a place where your stomach can hold stomach acid again. But for the time being, don't keep taking it. And then digestive enzymes, we have a formula called Digest Ease V. Oh, for the betaine hydrochloride, we use a formula called Temple Total Digest. I actually am going to put a link in the chat to our the products that I'm going to mention. And so yeah, I'm just mentioning a couple of the things that we tend to use. And you can pull that link up if you so desire and see those there. And you can supplement a little bit of extra bile as well, which is really important for fat digestion. And that you know, the Temple Total Digest formula has actually some betaine hydrochloride, some digestive enzymes, and some bile. Or we have another formula called Beta Plus that's just the bile factors. All right, so that is the replace section of the gut healing plan. So adding in more digestive fire to more completely digest our foods. Let's see, a comment, AB blood type has low stomach acid too. That absolutely can be true. All right. The third phase of gut healing is rebalancing the gut. And so this originally, in the original kind of naming of the 4R gut healing program, was referred to as re-inoculate. And, you know, was really adding in probiotics, adding in good bacteria. The reason we kind of changed it to rebalance is because there have been a lot of studies at this point showing that the vast majority of probiotics, as long as you're taking it, you're getting benefit from it, but they don't take up residence. Those bacteria in the supplement don't take up residence and just like start growing in your gut. And there's a whole bunch of different reasons why that's the case. But anyway, so they do have a great benefit while you're taking them, but they're not going to just, you know, take over and take up space and keep on living in your gut. So what good bacteria do for us in the gut is they break down foods that we can't break down. So a lot of the fiber that we eat, we can't really digest and absorb it, but those bacteria can. And they, as they're breaking it down, it's their food, they digest it, and they, as a result, produce about 10% of our energy that we then use to live. They also make food for our colon cells as a byproduct of fermenting and breaking down the fiber that we can't break down and absorb. And they make factors like butyrate. So butyrate is this breakdown factor that feeds our colon cells. And then if we make enough of it by having enough of those particular types of bacteria, it goes on to feed our mitochondria, which are our sort of energy producing little organs that are in all of our cells in our whole body and help us have energy and vitality. Those factors can be anti-cancer, they can help prevent cancer, And so we really want to have plenty of the good bacteria. When we take a probiotic, even though it's not taking up residence on its way through, it's protecting and nourishing our gut bacteria and reducing inflammation and stimulating and benefiting our immune function. So probiotics can be incredibly helpful. They just don't live there forever. Our healthy gut bugs also make vitamins for us. They make vitamin K and B vitamins. They help us break down toxins that we need to get rid of. They balance the acidity in our gut. They actually help us make, we actually can't really make serotonin without gut bacteria, which is our happy hormone. And we make a huge percentage of our serotonin in our gut. Not nearly as much in the brain as is produced in the gut. And at this point, the science of probiotics has gotten to the point where it's not just take a probiotic, it's what are you taking it for? So there are certain probiotics that help reduce the duration of colds and flus and lung infections. There are certain probiotics that really stimulate our immune system. There are other probiotics that help reduce blood sugar and can be useful for diabetes. There are other probiotics that are helpful for improving mood. So one of the things we do in our consults at Tummy Temple is we will look up in this really detailed probiotic database what probiotic would be most appropriate for the person in front of us. So ways that we can help balance our microbiome are getting plenty of fiber. And that can be from fruits, from vegetables, from whole grains, from beans, nuts, and seeds. Those are kind of the main categories that are rich in fiber. And specifically foods like Jerusalem artichokes, mushrooms, okra, jicama, bamboo shoots, water chestnuts, daikon radish, burdock root, and chicory contain inulin, which is a helpful type of fiber that can feed our healthy gut bacteria. I really like ground flax seeds or chia seeds as a good source of fiber as well. It's kind of a nice, it has a balance of types of fiber in it and are really helpful therapeutic foods. Usually have people do, at least to start, a tablespoon per day or maybe a tablespoon twice a day. Make sure, if you're increasing fiber like that, if you're doing a tablespoon like altogether of a really high fiber food like chia seeds, make sure you are also having plenty of water because it can sort of backfire and gel into like a clump that can be sort of like a plug in the gut tube if it's taken with not enough water. Fermented foods are a great source of probiotics. So kefir or yogurt, and that can be a non-dairy type if dairy bothers you. I recommend getting plain unsweetened forms and then adding a little bit of honey or maple syrup because the sweetened forms are just, they have a lot of sweetener in them. So, that way you can add some, but it won't be as much as what would have been in the pre-sweetened form. Sauerkraut and kimchi are wonderful options, and little bits of kombucha are good. Kombucha is a combination ferment of yeast and bacteria, and I find a lot of people have too much yeast. And so, drinking a 16-ounce bottle of kombucha every day is really not good for most people. It's way too much yeast, and kombucha still has some sugar in it, a little bit of alcohol. So if you're using it therapeutically, I would say like 2 to 4 ounces a day would be the max that I would recommend. And making it at home where you can ferment off more of the sugar can be a good way to do it as well. I've also seen people have a lot of cavities from bathing their teeth in the acidic kombucha every day. So that can be a problem too. And then you can supplement probiotics, obviously. And so I think, you know, as we discussed a little bit, looking at what are you taking it for, what type of probiotic would be best for you and your condition, is an important question to consider. And there are some good kind of broad spectrum ones that have a mix of things. The one that we often use is called Temple Biotic, and that one has some of the immune balancing and immune supportive strains and just like general gut health strains. But, you know, as I said, there are all these other ones that are very specific. Let's see. Oh, which probiotic for metabolism and reducing body fat? Well, one that can be helpful is called Akkermansia. And that is, I'm not sure if we put that in our product collection, but we do actually carry it. It's a newer probiotic that hasn't been available for as long, and it's a very specific strain that yeah, it's kind of newer to research, but it does seem to help with metabolism and blood sugar balance. All right. The other one we carry is called FloraPro, and that has a mix, but a type of probiotic mixed into it that can be helpful for Candida overgrowth. And then you can actually take extra butyrate in a supplement form, and butyrate is that factor that helps feed our colon cells, reduce inflammation in the colon, and then helps feed our mitochondria. And so we have a supplement called Tributyrin that actually is a capsule of butyrate. And that can reduce inflammation and stimulate repair of the gut lining. And then another product that we will sometimes use is called IG Guard, and it is actually like extra antibodies. You're taking a concentrate of antibodies that pass through the digestive tract, bind up microbes and toxins in the gut, and therefore reduce immune system activation and inflammatory response. So even if the gut lining is still leaky, this IG Guard can kind of hold on to things to help the healing process and help prevent things like bits of protein and bacteria from actually making it through the leaky gut lining into the bloodstream. Okay, we've made it to the final R of the 4R program, regenerate. So now that we've removed the irritating factors, replaced the digestive fire, rebalanced the gut microbiome, we're ready to heal and regenerate the gut lining. So ways that we can do that include increasing variety in our diet by aiming to eat on average 30 different plant foods per week. And so that sounds like, I mean, 30 different types of vegetables or fruits, but actually it's more broad than that. Any plant food. So that could be, you know, if you ate some quinoa, that would be one type of plant food. If you ate some rice, that would be a different type of plant food. If you ate some chia seeds, that would be another type. And then, of course, also all the different types of vegetables, but also different herbs and spices. So turmeric, if you sprinkled some turmeric in a recipe, that would be a type of plant food. If you put oregano in a recipe, that would be a different plant food. So it actually, you know, it's not as crazy as it sounds, or as many things as it sounds, but increasing that variety. And in some ways that helps crowd out eating too much of the more inflammatory foods like the wheat and dairy and corn and soy, etc. You just sort of scooch it out, reduce it by, you know, focusing on getting more variety of all these other things. Turmeric is especially potent and anti-inflammatory and really healing to the gut lining. It's really good for the liver. It's kind of, I mean, I am not saying anything revolutionary here, but it's an incredible food. It's so wonderful. So it can be juiced, it can be added to foods, it can be taken as a supplement. The form that we carry is called theracurmin. It's a very potent extract of curcumin, which is one of the kind of most studied active anti-inflammatory ingredients in turmeric. But the whole food turmeric is so therapeutic. So highly encourage you to add more of that to your diet. Make yourself some golden milk, which is, cooking up some turmeric. Can be like the dried powder with coconut milk, a little black pepper, and maybe a little honey, and having that as a beverage. Increasing leafy greens, green juices, and nettles, such as like a nettle infusion. And then having slimy and slippery foods like aloe vera or okra is really healing and kind of, it slips and slides through the gut and has a soothing, healing effect on its way through. Omega-3 fats are very anti-inflammatory and gut healing. And so you can get those from wild-caught fish, from walnuts, from chia seeds, from flax seeds, and, from fish oil supplements, of course, or algae supplements. And then there are specific nutrients that are really important for healing the gut lining. Those endothelial cells that line the small intestine. And so one of those is L-glutamine, which is it's a single amino acid. It's found in high amounts in bone broth, in spinach, cabbage, parsley, and then it's also found in gut healing supplements. So the one that we use and actually Tummy Temple manufactures is called IntestiHeal. I've seen this really help incredibly, even with inflammatory bowel disease, calm down inflammation. It's a powder that contains L-glutamine as well as a number of anti-inflammatory herbs, and another product called NAG, which is a soothing, healing substance. And so it's almost like a bandage that helps kind of coat and heal and soothe the intestinal lining each time you take it. Collagen is another good gut healing substance, and that's also found in bone broth or available as a supplement. We carry one called Collagen Pro. And then for healing the gut lining, we want to make sure we are getting enough vitamin D. And I recommend doing testing because people absorb it very differently from one another. People need different doses. A dose that would actually be too much for one person might not be enough for another person. So I think it really is useful having that tested and supplementing based on that. We can also get a lot of vitamin A precursors from our food. So that would be orange and red vegetables. So carrots, sweet potatoes, yams, pumpkin and winter squash, cantaloupe, apricot, papaya, bell pepper, tomato. And that is healing to the gut. And then leafy greens like spinach, kale, collards, mustard greens, etc. And choline, which is it's kind of in the B vitamin category, and that is found in beef, eggs, cauliflower, navy beans, tofu, almonds, and lettuce. And then there are some wonderful soothing, healing herbs, some of which are what's found in our IntestiHeal formula, but you can find them as single herbs as well. So that includes marshmallow root, slippery elm, licorice root, and those are actually, all three of those are in that IntestiHeal powder. Another thing that we'll sometimes do, in someone who has a lot of food reactions and is just having trouble figuring out what to eat, we'll sometimes use a protein powder called InflamaPro. And it has a whole bunch of different anti-inflammatory factors in it, as well as some really well-tolerated plant-based protein powder. It has the L-glutamine, it has some ground flaxseed. So it's kind of like a perfect gut food to just help you through when, either you just don't have time to get together a full breakfast, it can be a really useful, quick option. Or for those people that where their gut is so inflamed, they just are reacting to a whole bunch of different foods and just need some simple option. And so all of these things can be taken for kind of a specific gut healing plan, or kind of preventatively as well. And the dosing would probably be different. It would be, taking 3 times a day very consistently for sort of more an acute gut healing plan, and then maybe once a day as sort of a preventative plan. Another way to use some of these supplements that I've talked about is when you're going on a trip, or you're going to be spending time with family where you're going to eat some foods that bother you. That can be such a challenging thing to deal with. And, sometimes we can just say no to the cake that's being passed around at the family event. And sometimes that's just not going to happen, just practically speaking. And it's really helpful to have some tools to help you get through eating something that maybe doesn't make you feel very good. And so that can be, taking some digestive enzymes before and after the meal that just help you digest it more completely. Taking some of these gut healing nutrients or probiotics to just kind of calm any inflammation or irritation that happens as a result of eating that food. And then part of the regeneration, part of the rebuilding the gut lining is reducing stress. And so that's, one of the biggest things we can do is move the body daily, go for a walk daily, spend some time in nature as much as you possibly can, slow down while eating. So some of this is just the foundational, this is how our bodies repair, getting enough sleep. Our bodies do the majority of their repairs during sleep. So making sure we're prioritizing rest, and then meditation and breathing exercises can be really helpful. So I want to give you just a general timeline for gut healing. So this doesn't happen instantaneously. It can take probably 2 seasons. So, part of it is just it takes time to remove the irritating factors, whether they be foods or chemicals or getting away from mold, etc. That can take some time. But also, the gut actually heals very quickly. So it really is about, working on these other things, being consistent with getting enough of the digestive factors to properly digest our foods, and reducing the irritating exposures. That's often what takes the longest, because the gut will start to heal and regenerate within 3 to 5 days of taking away the sources of inflammation. The cells turn over very rapidly. The gut is one of the fastest healing organs in the body. And so there's a lot of hope there. We can absolutely heal. We just have to give the body what it needs and take away the things that are preventing recovery. But, practically speaking, probably looking at 6 months or so to really have a dramatic difference in gut health. And, if after 2 seasons, you're still having a lot of food sensitivities or, a lot of problems, then I really recommend coming in for some testing of either food sensitivities, that advanced stool testing, SIBO breath test. And that, I always try and work with the person in front of me and figure out what makes the most sense in their case. It's possible to do all of those tests at once, but usually we'll pick the one that seems the most pertinent and start there. So that is the end of our talk today. Any questions? I don't see any in the chat, but feel free to type it in now or unmute yourself and...
I have a question.
Sure.
I've kind of started on an elimination process, but a lot of from what I was looking at, it looked like cutting out like nuts and seeds, like even chia seeds, flax seeds, a lot of those things. But it sounds like they have a lot of beneficial healing properties as well. And
They do, yeah. I mean, nuts can be a bit hard to digest for some people, and so I can understand why that would be listed, but other than peanuts, I don't think of them as the most commonly allergenic foods.
okay.
Um, so yeah, I tend to lean into the um the ones that I listed, the dairy, corn, soy, wheat, peanuts. Yeah, those are the most commonly allergenic ones. And that, I have run across people that have very specific food reactions that are not in that category. And so that's when the testing can be sort of useful because
Mm.
um, you can just miss things. I had someone where we ended up running the testing, and for her, it was bananas and dates, you know.
Mm.
And we then did an elimination challenge diet with that to check, and it indeed was a problem for her. So yeah, there's a little bit of experimentation that goes into this for sure. But for most people, I would say the main reactions to nuts would be from not chewing them enough and
Okay.
from a deficiency of digestive enzymes.
Jennea, did you see the questions in the chat?
Uh, I
I
thought
can
I
read them to
answered
you.
them. Oh, I
Yeah.
just saw one more. I think I answered. Oh no, there were some that were behind a little alert that popped up. More specifics about, the value of grass-fed beef. I didn't see that one earlier. So yes, the one of the main um, reasons that you would choose grass-fed beef is that, well, several, but one of them is that cows that eat grass all the way through to when they're slaughtered um, are going to have a way higher omega-3 fat level in their fat, as opposed to cows that are fed a lot of corn in their life are going to have much unhealthier profile of fats in the meat. So that's probably one of the main ones. And then oftentimes the corn that they're being fed is GMO corn, which is heavily sprayed with glyphosate. And so there's a ton of glyphosate in the meat. You're probably never going to avoid that entirely, and that could be in the grass as well, but it's going to probably be more so with corn-fed animals. And then I commented on the AB blood type and the probiotic. And then can you say more about, okay. You repeated the question. I'm sorry, I didn't see that before. I think that was everything. Other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. Another thing I'm going to send out in that email is well, if you do want to purchase anything from our product collection, there'll be a coupon, a discount code. And I'm going to have to just double check that that's active with Heidi, our product manager, but that will be in the email that I send out, and that'll be good for a week after the email is sent out. And that will be good for 20% off any supplements ordered. And then also, if you would like to come in for treatment, in for a naturopathic consult, or we also offer colonics. We will offer a discount of $20 off any session. It would need to be booked in the next week, but it wouldn't have to actually be in the next week. So you would just mention that you attended the gut healing class at scheduling, and also, when you come in for the visit, and we're happy to honor that discount. So thank you so much for coming. I love sharing this information. I hope you gleaned some things that will be useful and help support your gut health.
Thank you, Jennea.
All right. Yes. Have a lovely evening. Good night.
Thanks so much. It's been great. Really appreciated
My
everything.
pleasure.
See you soon. Take care, everyone.
Okay, take care.
Good night.
Good night.